That is a first for us there, Mr. Peck, for an intro show. Thanks to Mr. Britt and Mr. Lindblom for that one.
Every episode, every week, we get just a little tiny bit better, small improvements. So by the time we get to like episode 9 or 10, we'll probably be in like a full-blown green screens production studio. It'll be quite the production. Maybe some pyro. I don't know.
You want to do pyro on the show?
Yeah, exactly. So to all of our dozens and dozens of loyal viewers out there, you might be asking yourself, it's Friday. It's not Tuesday, the day that Schroeder Good News usually airs. And the reason for that is that Mr. Eckler and I decided to do a special edition show today because today is 143 Day. And our special guest later on will be explaining sort of what that is and what that means. But we wanted to do because
first ever actual celebrity guest.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked and excited. Tom Hanks didn't make it, but that's okay. His loss. I'm sure he'll see it and want and wish and be on the next episode maybe. But because it's 143 Day, we want to do sort of a special episode about kindness and about Mr. Rogers and about the impact that he's had on most of us in education. I know me personally, I've done a lot this year incorporating Mr. Rogers in the neighborhood into my CIA. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the cool stuff we did later on when she's on. But I think, now more than ever, we're seeing his quotes, we're seeing his legacy in the news, people doing acts of kindness, people looking out for each other. And it's really cool. So we just want to celebrate that. And of course, do our usual celebrating the class of 2020. We got some special friends from Schroeder and from other schools on today. This might be our best episode. I know I say that every week episode, but I actually legitimately think this might be the best episode we do, Mr. Eckler.
All right, I'm in for it. I'm always up to try to top what we do last. It's getting harder every week. But our first guest is one of my students this year in CIA, and she has some very big news to share. All right, I can see she's laughing off backstage. So please welcome to the program, class of 2020 senior, Ray Lovelace. Ray, how are you?
Yay, Ray.
I know you've been dying to get on the show, Ray. You and Colsey have been letting me know, and she finally told me you got some great news to share. So why don't you tell everybody what your good news is?
Okay, so I'm going to be attending Finger Lakes College in the fall. I'm going to be studying business because I'm going to go into business when I get older.
And what was it you were telling me you want to try to open up a business someday or work someday for?
A business that can help pets and pets to help them.
I know you're big into animals, Ray, so we're happy to have you on the show. All right. Welcome.
So, Ray, one of the questions we usually ask, I'll ask you too. That's awesome. Congratulations. So we always ask our seniors, what's one of your favorite memories from Webster Schroeder now that you're a senior, looking back on your 4 years of high school?
Probably Unified because it's the best sport and I made so many friends with. And so I think that's the thing that I enjoy, even though that I was there for like 2 years because I joined last year, but it was so much fun. It's a shame that we can't do it this year, but it was so much fun.
Awesome. And I know, so I appreciate that you took the time to come hang out with us today because I know you got your Unified Basketball Zoom meeting today, and I was on it a couple weeks ago. So I know how much fun those are. So we're not going to keep you too awfully long because I don't want you to miss out on that today. I saw those dance moves during your dance party. I mean, the Zoom call won't be the same without you on it.
Ray, though, before you go, I know that we are always full of surprises on this show. So I would like for you to share one big surprise that we have for Mr. Peck, please.
Yes, Mr. Peck. So class of 2020 would like you to be our commence talker at this year's event.
That is, I didn't see that coming today. That's awesome. Thank you, Ray. I am honored and privileged. I'm trying to feel like I'm getting a little choked up here. That's so cool. Thank you. I wish I had more to say in this moment right now, but I really don't.
For those of you guys that don't know, Mr. Peck is one of the finalists for our class of 2020 speaker, and the class of 2020. I'm one of the advisors, and he's been bothering me because I know how much he wanted to do it, and he's been asking me how the vote's going for 2.5 weeks. And I've kind of been stringing him along until this.
He really has. This is
so now I'm going to try to let him
believe
the rest of this show. We're all about some good news here. Ray, we love your good news, and thanks so much for coming on and sharing your good news and breaking that news to Mr. Peck. We are still going to miss you around the hallways at Webster Schroeder.
Thank you, Ray.
In your class. All right, bye, Ray. Take care. Okay, have fun over your Sims.
I gotta, you know what? You got me good. You know that I've been bugging you, asking you how the vote's been going and everything, and
there you go.
You got me.
We don't know when and how graduation is going to shape out yet, but yes, you have been officially anointed by the advisors as the class of 2020 speaker. So
I'll be there wherever it is.
All right. Yeah, and you can draw your inspiration from our next guest.
Yeah.
Right. Are we going to Miranda next, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You want to introduce her?
Yeah, sure. So now our other class of 2020 guest is Miranda Baker. Oh, can I say last names on it? Miranda B.
We're fine.
Now I'm all flustered. Miranda is a student I've had 2 times, I believe, and she is a wonderful and fantastic young lady. I'm happy that she could join the show today on short notice. So everybody, please welcome Miranda.
Hi, Miranda.
Hi.
Miranda, I'm not at the top of my game right now because
I threw up.
You
It's
saw
okay.
the news
It's
that I got
exciting
30 seconds ago. So if I stumble over my words or I'm not as eloquent as I usually am, that's why.
It's okay. It's exciting.
It is exciting. I'm beyond honored to be able to speak for the class of 2020. It's super cool. But Miranda, let's share your good news. What's going on with you?
Okay, so next year I'll be going to RIT, and I'm going to be studying packaging science. And I'm hoping,
good field.
I know, I'm so excited. I'm hoping to go for a 5th year and get my MBA. We'll see how that all plays out.
Did you say
You're going to be designing all these things from that are coming from Amazon because shipping is coming everywhere. So it's just going to figure out how it's going to fit in packages and stuff.
Well, I want to specifically focus on sustainability of packaging. So when the consumer is done with the package, what it does in the environment and stuff like that.
That's so cool. I didn't even know that was something you could study. That's awesome.
It's actually a really popular major, or
Yeah.
I had a student that did it a few years ago, and I had the same reaction you did, Mr. Peck, and he was like, "Yeah, it's the fastest growing industry." And I'm like, "What?" But then you think about it, it kind of actually is, right? We're shipping things all over the place, and they need to be packaged, and we want to make sure they don't impact environmental stuff. So I was just as surprised as anybody else was like, "Oh, that's different," but here we are. So that's
I heard about it as a sophomore, and I was like, I got to do this. I just loved it the second I heard about it.
That's so cool. And I think,
awesome.
Miranda, I'm going to embarrass you for a second if you don't.
Okay, that's
Those
fine.
of you guys that are watching, you can see that Miranda is always smiling, and I'm telling you, this is what Miranda is like every day of the week, 5 days a week. Miranda might, aside from my wife, who has inspired me a lot and is a very outgoing extrovert, I would say Miranda is one of the other biggest influences on who I am. Every time I'm around Miranda, I just want to be a more bubbly person. And thank you to Miranda Baker for pushing me.
Miranda, I have to ask you the question that we always ask. What is one of your favorite memories at Webster Schroeder?
I was thinking about this while you asked, right? And it always just came back to volleyball, every single year. There's always ups and downs, but I love playing volleyball. So
that's
awesome. And I know that you guys are there's a great group of seniors. I think we're going to have Grace on the show. We'll see. There's Tyler. Hi, Tyler.
It's Lily.
Oh, Lily. I can only see the shoulder. I was trying to guess. I saw shoulder and brown hair. So I figured I had a 50-50 shot of being correct.
Yeah. My kids.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have Grace on Tuesday, another volleyball player. I worked a lot of your guys' games before I started coaching football, so it was cool to see you guys grow and progress as a team. And now we already saw that you're going to be a helper when you're grown up with saving the environment. So obviously, this is sort of a Mr. Rogers themed episode today, Miranda. And in class, we've talked a lot about him and did some of his speeches and documentaries and whatnot. So a bonus question for you is sort of like, what have you learned or taken away from being exposed to Mr. Rogers and his body of work?
Okay, so honestly, I don't remember watching him as a kid like most people do. But when you brought him into class, into our curriculum, it really made me want to strive to be a better person and like nicer to people, because you really don't. They say this all the time, but you really don't know what's going on in other people's lives. And we went to the movies and we watched him, and I loved the movie. I recommended it to so many people that they should go watch it, because I just loved it. And I cried at both the movies that we watched.
I think it's weird because, like, obviously the school year has not been a traditional school year, but it seems like we went and saw that movie in like December, I think, and that seems literally like it was like years ago. But it
really does.
Yeah, but that was only 5-6 months ago. So I think that's cool that we all got to have that experience and sit in the movies together and watch it. And speaking of, one of the chaperones that was with us that day is also on the show today, Mrs. Formella. Welcome to the show.
Hi, neighbors. Thanks for having me.
Look at that transition.
Wow,
that
was seamless right there.
I was wondering if you were gonna pick up and bring me in on that.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I planned the field trip and I was like, all right, who do I have as a chaperone? You were the first person I thought of because I know of our mutual love and respect for Mr. Rogers. So I was glad you were able to come with us.
It was awesome. And when the documentary ended and as we walked out, all the kids were going, I loved that. I loved it. It was the best just to hear how much it touched everybody. It was great. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So Mrs. Formella, what have you been up to since our break from school and during quarantine?
I have been doing my thing. I've been meeting up with kids every week, joining Zoom classes. I've gotten the blessing in all of this is I've gotten to spend a lot of time with my 2-year-old son and time that I otherwise would not have ever gotten. So, it's been a little chaotic, but I'm very thankful that we're all healthy and we all have the time together.
Awesome.
And
so,
go ahead.
So obviously, because this is our Mr. Rogers tribute episode, I have my shirt on from Steel City Brand. All right, Steel City Brand, a company in Pittsburgh. Hopefully, if I give them enough shout outs, they'll send me free stuff. I think it works when you obviously host a popular web show. So Mrs. Formella, would you like to share some of, your favorite Mr. Rogers quote or a lesson or something he said that's really meant a lot to you?
Yeah, I was thinking, you told me I didn't really have to prepare anything, but I was just thinking a lot last night and thinking about kind of if I had to sum up like my love for Mr. Rogers in a couple quotes, I kind of narrowed it down to 3. One of the popular Mr. Rogers quotes is, I like you just the way you are. And, Mr. Rogers and always accepted people for exactly like they were. No judgments, nothing, and really emphasized the fact that there's always something to celebrate about yourself. And I know in the working with the kids that I work with, we always try and encourage that. We're all unique, but it's all those differences that combine and make the world such a cool and beautiful place. So, I love that's one of his emphasis and what people remember about him. The second quote that I was thinking about, and it's a song that he used to sing in his show, which is, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And I was kind of laughing because Mr. Rogers was really preaching mindfulness way before it was trendy. He was real big on the fact that every feeling you feel is okay. And I feel like that's so important right now, with everything that we're dealing with, that it's okay to be scared and angry, and we should acknowledge that and embrace it, and then decide what we're going to do with it, and then learn from it. And when you think about all the conflicts going on, and if everybody really could take that lesson to heart and really just embrace and feel okay expressing how they feel, I think conflicts would be resolved so much easier. So he kind of was ahead of his game in that sense, because that's like one of the basic principles of mindfulness now, which is something that we, as a school district, really, really push. But the third thing I was thinking about was love is people. And then there's a poem. I'm going to just read like a little tiny section of a poem called Love is People that he has. And it says,
I literally went and grabbed that book from school yesterday. When I was there, that was one of the things that I grabbed off my bookshelf to make sure I had at home.
Yeah, it's the best book. And my son was reading it earlier, and I was like, my heart was melting. He was going, ooh, ooh, it was the best. But he says, love is people needing people. Love is people caring for people. That is love. This is my favorite part. And though some have costly treasure, it never seems to measure up to people needing people, caring for people, for that's love. I love that. He's best known for everybody being neighbors, and encouraging that we can all do that by caring for each other. And really, that's what like 143 Day is all about, is loving your neighbor and showing kindness. And being kind doesn't always necessarily mean you're paying for somebody's coffee in line at Dunkin', although it can, and it's super awesome. Showing kindness can be done in a variety of ways. Baking something for someone, just being there to listen, helping around the house. I saw, Mr. Peck, that you made your wife omelets this morning, even though eggs make you.
Yeah, I hate the smell of eggs, but I did it.
So all those little things, and when we're kind to others, that's showing love. And so I love this day and all the days that encourage you to be kind, because, if everyone would strive to be that helper, the world would just be such a better place. And what is so wonderful about Fred Rogers is he so strongly believed that it was possible. And because you feel his passion and how he feels, you can't help but feel that way, that it truly is possible that we could reach at some point a place where we all really care about each other. So, I could go on forever, because I really do. He is my hero. I love him. And, he's so much more than like a television character from like 20, 30, 40 years ago. He really just lived, encouraged such a lifestyle of centered around the philosophy that, if we accept who we are, if we validate our feelings, and we treat everyone as a neighbor, we can live in a better place. It's just, it's a beautiful thing. He was a beautiful man.
That's why you're so good at what you do, Mrs. Formella.
Exactly.
Right? Attitude and everything.
Thank
That was perfect.
you.
Now Mrs. Norris is gonna be like, man, I gotta follow that. I gotta go after her.
Yes. Here it comes. Actually, Miranda, can we let you go real quick? Even though
Yeah, that's totally fine.
You've been awesome sitting through that.
Miranda, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care,
Miranda.
honey. We're going to miss
Bye.
you. All right. Go ahead now with your introduction.
All right, so our next neighbor is our neighbor from Clem South. We've presented together at Teachers Teach Teachers. She's an all-around pretty cool person. Mrs. Norris, welcome.
Hi, neighbors. Guys, how do I go after that?
I did not pick the order of which they're in, but it's good. There's always like a little, so we'll be okay. This is perfect.
Whatever you say is going to be wonderful.
That was so eloquent.
Just
So,
say no, and we can.
Mrs. Norris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to for
Yeah.
this side of the ridge. The Schroeder gang might not know you too well, so.
Yeah, so I teach 5th grade at Clem South. It's a wonderful school. It's one of my favorite grades to teach, so I love being there. And this closure has been really weird, but there's been a little bit of light in all the darkness. I have some good news. So I'm a big video game player. Huge gamer. We have an arcade in our basement. But I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, which is so random. But it's like taken the world by storm during this quarantine. But it's been so fun. I've been playing. My husband has it. All of our friends have it. So we play together. And like last night, there was a meteor shower. So all of us were on someone's island watching the meteor shower. So it's been kind of a dorky, but really fun way to escape the stress of the world. And it's so wholesome. So that's been a fun part of my life lately.
And I love that you mentioned dorky, but one of the things that I admire about you is that, and I think it's incredible, because I know like fifth grade can be like so awkward as like you're trying to fit in, you're like trying to figure out what's cool. So I think it is like the coolest thing in the world that like fifth graders at Clem South get to have you as a teacher.
Aww.
Get to see you just like unabashedly like being yourself. Be like, here are the things I like just do it, and you own that. And I think that kids oftentimes don't get that message a lot, that it's okay to be them, and it's okay to like the things they like. The fact that they're getting that in elementary school is awesome.
Oh, thank you. I think it's huge. It actually, I picked a quote, a Mr. Rogers quote.
Look at you guys. I'm going to go get mine in school.
I don't think
yeah, I have the Funko Pop at school, but I actually picked a quote that goes along with that because I've always been a little bit quirky. I was like the theater kid who was like really punky and also went to ballet class all in one day. So I've always just kind of liked what I liked and was unafraid to celebrate that, I guess. So I really like this quote. It's one of my favorites, and it's something I try to bring into my classroom every day. It says, "It makes people," nope, just kidding. Let's try again. "It makes me feel good to see people who are doing something they love to do and enjoying the work of it. Isn't it wonderful to think that each of us has a different talent, something that we can use to help us and to help somebody else?" So I really like that one. I always try to encourage my kids to be who they are and celebrate who they are and like what they like, because that adds flavor to our world, and it makes our classroom and our world a much better place because everyone has their own special talent and interest, and just makes things more interesting. So I'm the same way, though. I have action figures and I have Harry Potter stuff everywhere. I'm obsessed with Disney.
You would fit perfectly in our hallway if you ever want to make the jump to the high school.
Oh, thanks. I walk in the next room.
Hopefully we can get we'll get Mr. Norse someday, and hopefully that.
Right?
I mean, if he's half as cool as you, we'll be okay.
He's pretty good. But
Yeah.
I walk into like Peck's room, and I like to have like I like to think at least I have a light elementary version of it.
Oh,
So,
you definitely do. It's awesome. I love your room.
thanks. I try one of the you guys spoke of being kind earlier, so in the front of my room, I have a huge flag that says "You'll never regret being kind," and we read the book Wonder to try to celebrate that. And I'm a big Mr. Feeney fan, so I have Mr. Feeney's advice posted in the front of the room. So I think it's important at all ages to teach kids to be kind to each other, and hopefully that turns them into kind adults that help make our world a better place.
Exactly. So last but not least, we have a very special guest, sort of our first.
This is pretty cool.
Side of our Schroeder bubble here. So I'd really like to welcome Mr. Rickley James to our show, who many of us on the show are a big fan of his Twitter account at Mr. Rogers Says. He also has a podcast on Spotify and various other streaming platforms called Welcome to the Neighborhood. So Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
So as we're all sort of amateur experts here at Mr. Rogers, you're the professional when it comes to it. So I wanted you to, we talked about 143 and 143 Day. Could you maybe explain that to those that aren't as familiar with the concept and the idea?
Sure. I was trying to remember if it was last year or this year when Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania declared that it was May 22nd was going to be 143 Day. And it was a day that was really to emphasize doing acts of kindness for other people, being loving to other people, and even taking some time maybe to thank people who had done kind things for you and maybe go out of your way a little bit. And it really kind of became a national movement now. You can see the hashtags all over the place of 143. So I'm not sure which states have officially declared today like that day. I know there's a movement. If you go to a website called 143dayusa.com, that site literally went online at 1:43 today, and they're trying to make it into a national holiday, and they want people to share acts of kindness and share things, all inspired from Fred Rogers and 143. Which, if you don't know, Fred Rogers had this code that one was I, because there's one letter in the letter I, and then love is four letters, so LOVE 4, and then 3 was you, YOU. So he would use that code a lot, whether he was writing letters to friends or he would say it on the show. There's some episodes, and even this morning on the Mr. Rogers Say Twitter feed, I posted a little video of him singing a song, Many Ways to Say I Love You, and putting in 143 in there in place of I love you. So yeah, there's the website on the screen. So 143dayusa.com. Very good. Yeah. But we'll see different friends on that website, like Officer Clemens and different people who have been on the show over the year, and myself are on there. So it's just a really neat day. And I'm sorry if I go on too long, just stop me.
You can't. We have no limits. This show started with like Mr. Peck and I said, hey, we should do a show. And we said, okay. And then various people in the district have said we enjoy it, and this is what came out of it. And you are our first official, like, outside of our district guest, and I want to thank Mr. Peck for doing that, because this is something that means a lot to him, and I know the people that we have on the screen with us. So we really appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you. Well, I always enjoy seeing Mr. Peck's little tweets when he tags me in them for his classroom, and it's great to be able to share this together, and I appreciate you guys doing this in your district.
Thank you. It's funny too, because I used the video. Obviously our communication with our students have been a little bit different than normally. So whenever I post a thing on Google Classroom, I always put Mr. Peck and I put 143 under it. And for some classes, I never, like the two classes that I've used them a lot, they knew what it meant. But some of the other classes didn't. I showed them the video today, the little 2-minute one. And the coolest part of my day was like this look on this kid's face when she realized like what that meant and what I'd been saying for like the past 2 months, which was super cool. I'm getting like chills.
That's great. And I that's wonderful to hear. And I forgot something very important. And most people might know this by now if they've seen the documentary It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, or read any of the books or any articles about him. But Mr. Rogers weighed in for most of his life at 143 pounds. And he would get out of his morning swim every day, and he would go and weigh himself, and said almost every day it was at 143, and he maintained that for his life. And so he felt like it was so much a part of him that he wanted to be a person of love, that really meant a lot to him to maintain that weight at exactly 143. So pretty amazing.
That is such a cool story, and the discipline that it takes to weigh the same amount for your adult life. I literally can't even.
Dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously people have been sharing their favorite Mr. Rogers quotes. You run a Twitter account dedicated to Mr. Rogers and his life and his quotes. Is it possible for you to pick one of your favorite quotes?
Sure. I just wanted to say, by the way, I see it rolling across the screen. It's actually Mr. Rogers Say. There's no S on the end on the Twitter account. I wanted it to be Says, but at the time I created it, they wouldn't give you that many letters. But so it just ended with Say. But I'm happy to share a quote. This is probably my personal favorite quote, and I wrote it down here so I can just read it to us so I don't mess it up. But he shared this quite a lot, and he said, from the time you were very little, you've had people who have smiled you into smiling, people who have talked you into talking, sung you into singing, loved you into loving. Let's take some time to think of those extra special people. And he would quote that at things like graduation ceremonies and different places where he would go and speak. And it really was a beautiful quote and a beautiful way of reminding us that we learn from each other and that we actually teach each other with these little things we do. I mean, what a powerful thought to think, that we could sing someone into singing, that we could love someone into loving, and that we could, really contribute to another person's life that way. He just had a great way of spotlighting what we really could do. So.
Uh-oh, I'm a little teary-eyed.
Hannah's gonna get that one.
I was trying to. When they showed that part in the documentary, I remember sitting in the theater, and I think I had my son like 6 months before, and I remember just sitting there sobbing because in the documentary they pause, so you actually can sit there and think about all those people's life, and it really is just such a powerful moment.
Yeah. And it does, I was a fairly new parent at the time. I think my son was around 3 when I saw that. But I immediately thought of that, the ways that we teach children and the way that we teach other people and the way that they learn from us. And you're right, there's so much as a parent you can glean from that comment. And I think the opposite of that is true as well, that, we can hate people into hating. And that's something we don't want to do. Wouldn't it be terrible if that was our legacy? But we can almost anger people into anger. We can really do all the opposite things that Fred Rogers was hoping we wouldn't do. And he was reminding us that, the good things are just as contagious. The good things are just as teachable as the harmful things. And I think we're in kind of a time right now where there's a real toxic environment all around us, and especially on a place where I'm at every day, like Twitter. It can be a pretty toxic place, but it always overjoys my heart to see so many wonderful people that are so inspired and do want to share good things, and they want to not be a part of the problem. They want to be a part of helping to love each other well. And so, yeah, great.
I'm glad you mentioned that part of the movie. So I actually went to go see the movie with my mom, who's a retired teacher. And so that was like a really special part of the movie because I got to the documentary because I was there, and it was just really cool to watch it with my mom as my mom, but also my mom is this amazing teacher who taught for 35 years and left a really great legacy. So that was really special. So when you said that, it made me think of that too. And there was that silent pause of just quiet. It was a really cool moment.
Yeah, really good.
So speaking of teachers and educations, I know one of the things that Mr. Rogers did throughout his lifetime was provide comfort to others when they're going through difficult times. One of his last public appearances was the public service announcements that he did after 9/11. And so the question I have for you, Rick, is if Mr. Rogers was still here, what do you think he would say to the high school seniors, the class of 2020 that are going through such a difficult time and are having to go through so many, losses of ball and all the sort of the landmark events that come with being a senior in high school?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when you emailed it to me, I put some thought into it. And I'm going to read something that he actually did say at one of his commencement speeches in just a moment here. But I think one thing that he would do is he would help us to identify what it was we are feeling at the moment, and to identify it, and as he would say, whatever is mentionable is manageable, and because anything that is human is mentionable, and I think that's important, and I think he might in some ways remind all of us, whether we're students or not. There's a real sense of loss that we're going through right now. There's a lot of grief that we're struggling with, and there's a lot of that we don't always know what to do with our feelings. But in many ways, the last few months have put us in different stages of grief, I think. And I think we're going through them at different times and feeling them at different times. And so it's important to kind of identify those things. But one thing he said, this was in 2002, what I'm about to read to you, and you can find it online. There's several YouTube videos and websites that have this. But he did a commencement speech at Dartmouth College in 2002. And I just want to share this little story that meant so much to him. And the last line of what he says in this story, I think, can apply so much to the class of 2020 and really to all of us right now. And this is what he said. I'm reading what he wrote. Have you heard my favorite story that came from the Seattle Special Olympics? Well, for the 100-yard dash, there were 9 contestants, all of them so-called physically or mentally disabled. All 9 of them assembled at the starting line, and at the sound of the gun, they took off. But not long afterward, one little boy stumbled and fell and hurt his knee and began to cry. The other 8 children heard him crying. They slowed down, turned around, and ran back to him. Every one of them ran back to him. One little girl with Down syndrome bent down and kissed the boy and said, "This'll make it better." The little boy got up, and he and the rest of the runners linked their arms together and joyfully walked to the finish line. They all finished the race at the same time, and when they did, everyone in that stadium stood up and clapped and whistled and cheered for a long, long time. People who were there are still telling this story with great delight. And you know why? Because deep down, we know that what matters in this life is more than winning for ourselves. What really matters is helping others win too, even if it means slowing down and changing our course now and then. And I really love how much he loved that story and the way he closed it with that final line about having us, at times we are going to have to slow down and change our course every now and then. But what really matters is helping others. And I think that might be the message. It would be impossible for me to know what he would say to us right now. But I think he would, first of all, make it especially about the children in our lives and whatever we could do to help them and to slow down and change course. But everything's new right now. All of us are changing course. All of us have had to figure out what that means. We're still not sure what it means exactly and what the future looks like. But hopefully, even if we're doing this together apart, so to speak, hopefully we're still trying to do this together and we're trying to help others win at the same time. I have seen a lot of very good things come out of us being socially isolated from each other. I think we've maybe started to appreciate each other a little more and miss each other. And I've seen people deliver groceries at houses and drop them off, even if they couldn't stop and say hi. It was a matter of, you need food, we want to bring it to you. And just different things that our communities are trying to do to help each other. And I think at the end of the day, our humanity is maybe being found again, and you don't have to have a badge of Democrat or Republican or anything like that. When it comes down to it, your badge is I'm a human being and and I need your help and you need mine. So maybe he would say something like that today to us as well. I don't know, but I hope.
That was excellent. I've only seen, I had, Mr. James, I had, the interactions with you online that I've seen. And when Mr. Peck said you were coming on, I knew we were getting somebody special, but that was outstanding. So thank you very much for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Eckler, I think the show is going to throw people off because you and I are being so serious, and we're not people that are typically.
No,
it's words a lot.
It's a special. It's a special show.
They're seeing a different side of us.
This is a special show, Mr. Peck. We announced it. We knew our guests were coming on. We can get back to the silliness on Tuesday. And
I think it's rare that you and I are at a loss for words, and just listening to Mrs. Formella and Mrs. Norse and Mr. James speak. It reminds me of the story in his biography when he was working with Margaret McFarland for the childhood development, and they brought in the guy that worked with clay, and she didn't want him to make anything special, to sculpt anything. She just wanted him to play with the clay and show the kids how passionate he was with the clay, because that would inspire passion in him. And that's that's how I'm feeling right now. Is just like, it's awesome just hearing people speak about things that are so important to them and that they are so passionate about. So, again, thank you guys for being on the show today and sharing all of this with us. I said it was going to be our best episode, and it 100% has been.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
This is
So-
going to be great.
Last question for you, Ms. James, is obviously one of the quotes from Mr. Rogers we've been seeing around a lot is, look for the helpers. And you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but for those out there that are like, well, that seems so daunting. I don't know how to be a helper. I've never been a helper before. Like, how can somebody go out and be a helper?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you know it when you see it. We had something happen this week, totally unexpected in our neighborhood. We had a flood. And my wife looked out the window and said, "Oh my goodness, look down the street." And literally in front of our street, there was a huge flash flood happening. And in almost 10 years of living in this house, that's never happened before. In some ways, I feel like the planet is trying to evict us right now. I'm not sure what's happening, but we looked out the window and there was a car stuck in the middle, and it was just like a raging river going by. And, sometimes the help you can offer is, we got to call 911 for this person right now. I only say that as an example of, like, sometimes it's just thrust upon you when you see the need and you are able to meet it in some way. You do that. And I don't know any other way to think about it. Maybe you can look for some ways of think of people in your life or around you that might need a little extra help right now. And it's just, I think, simply a matter of stepping out and doing it. Maybe it is just kind of knocking on your neighbor's door and asking him, "Are you okay right now?" I have a friend that is part of the Islamic community here in Springfield, Ohio. And I sat down with him one day and we recorded a podcast because I do a couple of different podcasts other than the Mr. Rogers one that I do. And he was telling me that the part of his faith as a person who practices Islam, he said the people 9 doors to your right and 9 doors to your left are your neighbors who you are responsible for. And I thought, wow, that's, even if you're not any sort of a faith at all, that's a big task. And I was thinking, I don't even know if I know people 9 houses down from me. I don't know if I've ever met them. And he was very serious about, they're your responsibility. If they have need and you have something to do, a way to help, you need to do it. So I don't know if that's any help to anyone listening or not, but maybe it's just as simple as starting with your own neighborhood, starting with your own neighbors, and trying just to do what you can do. I don't think anyone expects anybody to be like a superhero right now or do things that you can't reasonably do. But maybe sometimes helping is just by putting a mask on because you're trying to protect somebody else who might be in a very vulnerable place. And I don't think it's too much to ask to be a servant to those around us in such little ways. We're such a privileged people that anytime somebody asks us to do something just a little bit inconvenient, we think they've impinged on our rights. But I really feel like, what can we do to just help a person? Can we get beyond ourselves or what we might want, even if it's inconvenient for us? How can I help that other person? And just in a closing thought, I'm sorry for going on so long, but I was just thinking about that quote from Mr. Rogers that he said, 2 children to look for the helpers, but really for the adults. All of us are going to need help at some moment or another, but we really do need to strive to be helpers too, and especially to those children that are in our lives. Again, I think Fred Rogers would make it all about the kids. And we need to be looking at the children in our lives and asking, how can we help them right now? What are they scared of? What kind of things are they grieving, and what kind of loss are they feeling right now? Not having their friends around and not being able to go to school or not being able to play on the playgrounds the way they want to. And sometimes just sitting and listening to them can be so helpful too. So I hope that was a help.
That was an incredible help. Thank you. Awesome.
Especially for somebody who has 2 kids that's dealing with that right now. That was very helpful.
Yeah, good. Good. Well, thank you for having me today. This has been a real treat. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
The
this
pleasure's
was
been on
I'm
this
so
end.
happy you were able to make it today. Thank you so much for that.
I don't even want it to be over because I just listening to what you have to say. Truly, thank you for inviting me so that I could listen to all of you.
Yes, thank you. This was wonderful. This was the perfect way to have my Friday go.
It was. This was definitely a good way to enter the long weekend for sure. And so to everybody out there that's watching, hopefully you guys enjoyed our change of pace. Mr. Peck and I'll be back at it on Tuesday with something, but I'm going to have to digest for sure before I get into that planning. And everybody, please stay safe and help your neighbor on this 143 day this upcoming weekend.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Bye, neighbors.
Bye, neighbors.
Bye, neighbors.
Okay,